Hello, I'm Michael Tessera and I prepared this ACCC cheat sheet for January 2026. I guess the first thing you can realise is that I've fallen way behind. I'm actually doing it on the 21st of April 2026, so I've fallen a few months behind. The good news is that it was a very quiet month. They didn't do very much ACCC in that month. I think maybe they've been busy with all their new merger laws, and maybe that resulted in a bit less activity in other areas. A bit of background about myself. I'm a competition and consumer lawyer, and I've been running my own practice to Sarah Legal Consulting for the last 18 or so years. And in that role, I help companies, individuals with competition and consumer law matters. Also do some independent consultancy work for various legal publishers, and have a part-time role as general member of NCAT, which is a very good experience in actually doing consumer law complaints. Prior to that, I worked at the ACCC for 15 years in a variety of roles, including enforcement and mergers. As I said, it was a very quiet month. One enforcement matter and 3 merger matters, so not a lot to talk about. It'll be a quick PowerPoint presentation today. The first one involved a company called SIA Booking Group, which traded in the name Economy Bookings, and what was alleged was effectively drip pricing. Economy Bookings paid 2 infringement notices, $39,600, for the way it was advertising its pricing on its website, and the ACCC alleged that it failed to prominently display the total price for car rental services as a single figure, and also made false and misleading representations about whether pre-selected optional extras were included in the rental price. So as you work through the booking process, you're seeing a lower price, and then when you get to the end, you realise it's significantly higher. In the press release, they had these 2 downloads from the website, which are a bit small, but as you can see there on the right, somebody wants to hire a Kia, and it's telling them they're going to pay $147.10 for that Kia. However, when you get to the next screen, suddenly the price has shot up to over $300. So you can see there on the left at the top, the total price is over $300. So that's classic drip pricing. It's been an area where the ACCC have been very active in the past with car rental companies and airlines, and I think most of the conduct has stopped in very many industries. But it seems Economy Bookings weren't on the same page and kept doing the conduct. So I guess an infringement notice to stop the conduct is pretty light remedy in the circumstances. First merger is one that I can't talk too much about, and that's because I have a role in it. This is WiseTech has to divest Expedient following an ACCC investigation. So WiseTech in August 2025 bought a competitor, E2Open, and amongst all the different subsidiaries that E2Open had was a subsidiary called Expedient, which is a provider of logistics software products, and that's WiseTech's main product. So the ACCC was concerned that WiseTech bought E2Open and acquired Expedient, and an undertaking was entered into early this year whereby WiseTech has to sell off Expedient. Now, the reason I can't talk about it too much is that when one of these things happens, an independent manager has to be appointed to run the business, and an independent auditor has to be appointed to oversee the sale of the business. And that's my role. I've been appointed as a WiseTech independent auditor, so I obviously can't talk too much about it. But effectively, I guess I'd say what my role is. So I have to keep an eye on WiseTech Global to make sure that the Expedient business is able to continue operating as a competitive concern, that support that's provided to it by WiseTech continues to be provided. Confidential information doesn't go from Expedient to WiseTech, and that's in the pre-divestiture stage. After the business is sold to a new buyer, I also have a role in making sure that any transitional services that are provided by WiseTech to the new buyer are provided appropriately. Confidential information isn't exchanged between the 2 competitors. So that's my role. And as you can see, it's a pretty strict set of obligations in the undertaking about the sale process. I don't know quite how long I'll have to be involved in doing this role. I was appointed some time ago to do the bingo divestiture of Dialer Dump and or the Banks Meadow site, and that was 7 years ago, and I'm actually still drafting a report, so who knows how long it's going to last. The next merger was Ampol wanted to buy the EG Group, which consists of a couple of businesses, e.g. Group Australia and e.g. Asia Pacific Holdings or PAC Holdings. And on 21st of January 2026, the ACCC said, we've had a little preliminary look at the acquisition and we don't like it. And so we're pushing it into phase 2, which is an in-depth investigation. So as you can see, the ACCC, after having a look at various information, came to the conclusion that the acquisition could substantially lessen competition in the retail supply of petrol and diesel in several markets in Australia. ACCC identified 115 EG sites where the acquisition, in their view, would substantially lessen competition in a relevant local market. And they also thought more broadly the acquisition would lessen competition in a number of metropolitan areas. So they got significant concerns, and Ampol had offered to sell off 19 sites, but that wasn't sufficient for the ACCC, and so the matter's now going to phase 2, and that means the ACCC will ask for a lot more information or obtain a lot more information, but also go to the market and ask other market participants what they think about the merger. So this could be one of the first mergers determined under the new, at least at phase 2 level, determined by the ACCC. The other merger was Coles Group, and this is they're proposing to buy M Holdings, but M Holdings isn't actually an operating business. Rather, it's a development proposal for a vacant site in Kalgoorlie, in WA. And so what's happened is M Holdings has got approval to build a supermarket and a liquor store there, and Coles want to buy it. And the ACCC's again referred this to phase 2 because they got concerns about the merger. The reason they got concerns is that Coles already has a significant market share in that local market in terms of both grocery supplies and probably liquor, and they're worried that if Coles buy this development opportunity, that they'll have a significant market share in that market and there won't be any competition. But you can see there, they're concerned that there wouldn't be any competitive constraint to Coles' existing operations in that location. So that's another interesting one. All of these acquisitions of other small supermarkets as well as development proposals have to be run by the ACCC. That's it. Very quiet month. I think that's must be a record in terms of how few announcements were made. I'm sure the ACCC was doing a lot of work. They received a very large number of waiver applications and applications for mergers. So a waiver application is given where the party believes the acquisition is not going to raise any material competition issues. So there are a lot of waivers and a lot of actual applications. They've been very busy with all that. The team's grown significantly since I used to run the Sydney Mergers and Asset Sales team, and we had a team of about 5 at our biggest. And nowadays the team's so much larger than it was back then. WiseTech Expedient's an interesting one. It was an enforcement investigation because WiseTech didn't advise the ACCC of the acquisition. They've obviously formed the view that it didn't raise any competition issues. ACCC didn't take enforcement action. They've simply obtained an undertaking to require the sale of Expedient to a third party. So I can't talk too much about that. And I guess the first couple of matters going for phase 2 investigation, in-depth investigation, that's very in-depth. There's a lot of information that has to be provided. The same approach the ACCC takes in the past in terms of market inquiries, that won't change at all. But it'd be interesting to see whether they oppose these 2 mergers. I think the Ampol merger probably could get through. I think they just have to raise the number of stores they're proposing to divest. But the Coles one, I can't see too many ways that can get through. If Coles are the only guys in that local market, and this is the only proposal that is advanced, then I think that one might not get through. But we'll wait and see. So that's all I had. If you have any questions about this very short presentation, feel free to give me a call or drop me an email. Bye-bye.